What are the biggest distractions and false solutions within the so-called truth movement? That is anybody willing to question their reality and then try to actually make that reality better. Now, of course, it is one to know of the problem very deeply, maybe looking at all sorts of rabbit holes, and another to know how to confront all those rabbit holes, what you're actually doing within your personal life. And there's a lot of question as to what to look at, what to do, what is right, what is wrong, etc., among all sorts of ideas. Because let's face it, you're on the internet, there's tons of different ideas, and people approach it from many different angles and ways, and some even spin narratives. Some things may be mixed lies, mixed truths that make it really hard to decipher. Well, I'm just going to be giving you a list, a rundown here, and then I'm going to be giving you what I believe to be the real solutions. And of course, when I say that, I want you to think for yourself even still, and I want you to question what I say. Okay, create the conversation if you think it needs to be created, and if I am wrong on any of these points, please mention it to me. I'm sure you're probably going to have some sort of disagreement somewhere in what I have to share in this video, because it could be quite controversial among those who call themselves truth or freedom seekers. So let's go through this. The first one I want to mention is, and I have to be very careful with some of these things, but Zion, okay, and communism or similar type of ideologies that people like to blame. You know, it's all Israel or China or maybe the Vatican, right? So these are not root targeting solutions, and I consider them distractions. And it's not that you should not look at any of these things I'm mentioning, for instance, or any of these ideas you say I never should look at it. But some people focus in on this and they say this is the thing that we need to look at. And communism can be practiced voluntarily. Socialism can be practiced voluntarily, and these terms have been twisted quite a bit. And I know this from studying the abolitionists after the 1800s. You know, there were people, there's like a book called Voluntary Socialism, and it's totally different from the way people perceive socialism. And I'm not saying that everybody should then consider that to be a good thing. It's that there's different perspectives on it. But when it comes to any of these ideologies, the minute they're brought into statism, ultimately they become a problem. So this idea of Zion, right, is creating a state. And the minute you're doing that, you're falling into statism. So all these isms and ologies, if practiced voluntarily, do not fit under the band of statism, which is the main message on my channel. And I call that the root problem to what's going on in our world. And if you don't know about that, I would recommend the 5 questions I'm going to put on the screen for you right now, and a book called Government Scam, or Government, the Biggest Scam in History by Etienne de la Boétie II, and my book, Slavery Gone for Good, Black Book Edition, or Larkin Rose, The Most Dangerous Superstition, or Mark Passio, Natural Law Seminar. These are all great resources to learn about statism and the mindset surrounding that, okay? I think Larkin Rose maybe hits it on the nail in his book, and through his approaches, the Candles in the Dark method, for instance. All right, but once you understand that, it doesn't matter if you are a Republican, a constitutionalist, a Democrat, a libertarian even, all those fit under the banner of statism, and thus they're all actually part of the problem. And therefore, when you say one of them is part of the problem, you might be missing the fact that all of these other ones are also part of the problem. If they all have the same nature, they're all putting man above man, giving rights that don't exist in nature, creating exemptions to morality. And these are just some of the examples, right? Creating a falsity and an illusion in the sense that, you know, you have these robes and these outfits, and all of a sudden they grant you more special powers or rights than other people. You know, they're able to tax and take other people's money against their will, use violence, lock them in a cage for whatever they arbitrarily write on a piece of paper. That piece of paper is worshipped. They're worshipped like gods. There's a lot of issues with the psychology of this. If you want to learn about that, healthrevealed.org. Okay, getting that out of the way. Next thing is FE, okay, or Earth being kind of a stationary plane, and various other quote-unquote conspiracies, and some make it comedic and some actually go into it through an educational medium. But the point is that these can organize a lot of people, and I would say that movement in particular is one of the most organized in the truth movement, which is why I think their message has spread so much, but also because it does not deal directly with our freedoms and our morality, right? It doesn't deal with talking to people and saying, okay, why do you believe what you believe, and what is going on here? How do we evolve humanity in the sense of what we actually do within our personal lives? And yes, what we do is based on our belief systems and what we know. So for instance, if we know this, we might say, okay, I don't want to give my money to NASA or these government agencies that are doing all sorts of things that might be deceiving us. But let's face it, in the very first place, they're taking money that does not belong to them. So it doesn't matter what it's used for. It doesn't matter what agenda is being pushed. That is just one agenda, right? But there's so many other agendas. And who's you to say, well, that's the one thing I should focus on? Maybe it's because you really like that topic, but then make it clear that that's not the only thing you talk about, right? Eric Dubay, I think, he doesn't get enough credit for all the other things he talks about on his channel, because he has videos on all sorts of subjects, and some of them in great detail, such as his one on statism and government, but it doesn't get a lot of attention because people are more interested in maybe this more comedic, like, oh, this one's special and it's right in front of your face type of knowledge, right? So people fall into these rabbit holes, but they're unwilling to look at something that might be a little harder to look at, which is if they themselves are the problem, again, through statism, all right? Independent media influencers, this is my third point, not activating their audience. This is a huge distraction, a huge problem. And I talk about it with Jim Gale as well, where we're saying, hey, why aren't you inspiring your audience to act? Where's your action steps? Where's your action page? Are you helping people network in their local community? Are you saying this is the solution you should do at the end of the show? Or are you just providing your viewers with fear and like, oh my gosh, World War III and zombie apocalypse the next day? Because that's what it seems like is happening. Right? All these influencers are reporting the news, right? And they're just reporting latest events, things that rise to the surface, and then diving deeper into those rabbit holes, but not looking at, again, what's going to evolve humanity and get you or the audience to act together, to come together, to actually change things. Okay? So, fourth point. Paperwork as a solution, or assembly, state nationals, sovereign citizens, and blaming the Vatican, right? These things tend to go together. This is also a huge distraction and false solution. It's paperwork, right? I can get out of the system, but not really by saying no, but finding another loophole or way out of it. I'm not directly going to say no. I'm not going to stand my ground. If I'm going to find some unique way and I have to convince everybody else of the way to do it, and I have to study hours and hours and buy this course for hundreds of dollars to learn how to do it. This is not the solution. Learning a certain terminology, but not connecting heart to heart and understanding what's beyond word. Understanding that freedom is a spiritual concept or morality, and that transcends language. Language can describe some of those things, and language can be effective, right, for education, but it could also be counterintuitive if you have to teach people all sorts of new words and you're like, Corey, you shouldn't be using that word. You shouldn't be saying person. You have to say people, for instance, right? And then you actually get into court and all these people tend to lose, and they tend to be fighting their whole life, and they tend to be rebels on their own because they're not organized with other people. And they're all using their own symbolism and their own systems, which can be good in the sense of like, hey, we're creating a sense of rebellion, but I don't know if you really want to do that, because are you just creating a new system on top of the old system? What about getting people out of all these systems? Because you see, you're still granting rights to certain people that don't exist in nature. You're believing that paperwork has magical powers that can shift morality, and that you can take yourself out of the system merely through the use of a pen, when no, it takes actual physical effort and action, maybe even growing food, right? And getting together with people and saying, no, that's it. Very simple, right? Doesn't require any paperwork at all. Next problem on this list is populism and old frameworks. We got to return to the Constitution. We got to look at the this article and this specific code, and you got to know all these fancy little things, and you got to interpret America the way I do. You have to say the pledge the way I do. And populism, now this is a term I associate myself with before I became a voluntarist, abolitionist, anarchist, right? I mean, that's what I am. Just myself. I'm just being myself and standing on that sense of, hey, I own what I own what I produce, and other people own what they own, I leave them alone, right? That's voluntarism. It's, I want to live in a consensual world. I want to agree to what I want to do in my own life. Populism is, let's take back our power. It tends to be, though, more on the sense of nationalism of like, this is my country, this is my pride, and I just want more freedom in the sense of nationalism. But I still want a state. I still want a ruler over my own life, and I want to give them rights that don't exist in nature, and create a whole system that tells everybody else how to live their own life, right? Now, populism, I can say, is heading in the right direction, but unless you understand statism, you're always going to be fighting a system that enslaves you. Because, you know, the populism, it's the farmer's party, it's for gold and silver and term limits. Like, I know all these arguments, and I used this term before everybody started using it now, right? They're for the people, the People's Party. But the problem is, so is China, you know, the People's Republic, and the people for the people, and the Weimar Republic. We are a republic. We have a constitution and rights, and you have the freedom of speech. It doesn't matter. The point is, these paperwork, this stuff is not going to work for your freedom. What's going to work for your freedom is you actually standing on it and understanding, knowing what it actually is. Right? So that is how you're going to attain freedom. It's not going to happen through any other means. Right? Now, it's going to be a combination of, hey, gold and silver, and like I said, decentralizing and growing food. Okay, right? But it's not going to be any one particular method, and it's also not going to say, well, everybody else must do this too. And, you know, populism is the only way, right? Again, it's ideology. We want to get away from that if we truly are free. Right? Beyond attachment, beyond the material. Now, next one is voting and elections. This is the heart of statism. It is considered political action. Okay, so that is action that actively endorses somebody ruling over your own life. And whether you're voting for someone who gives you more or less freedom, you're still proclaiming that you want a slave master. If you own yourself, you own yourself. It is just that simple. And unless we can come to terms with that mere basic reality, we're always going to be trying to find justifications to uphold an old system that does not serve humanity anymore. Protest or rebellion is the next thing I have to mention. In mass movements of dependence or externalization, please, master, make my condition better. And oh my gosh, well, God will save us. God will come down. Jesus will come down to earth, the third coming, or whatever, how many times we've had so many comings, and the earth will end as well. I mean, this is what people are looking up to because of how desperate they are for solutions. And they don't know about statism and getting together, and they don't have faith in themselves to change other people and themselves and their reality, right? They look at the world, they say, oh, nobody's going to listen to me. I have to protest. I have to make noise. I have to make attention. I have to do something violent and mean. It's like, no, this is not the method to do it. Even mere protest is not the way to effect change. If you are being a rebel and you're causing violence, it justifies the state to come in with more violence against you, and it makes everybody else say, man, well, those are crazy rebellion people, and they deserve to be attacked, and they deserve to be controlled because they're anarchists, they're crazy, they're chaotic, right? And so anarchy has gotten the reputation of chaos because rebels use it as their term to say, I don't want this system anymore. I don't want this law, when oftentimes they're just saying, I don't want that master. I want another master, right? I want things my way. They're selfish. And then they go and they loot a bunch of stores and they take a bunch of stuff that isn't theirs and they block public property. This is not the way to change the world. It just gets in people's way. It just annoys people. And it just justifies the system going after them. And then they can then use that as justification again to protest more, and then protest on top of control, and protest on top of control. And then people say, well, this is why we have all these controls. It's because of all these crazy people. So they make this never-ending justification loop. This is literally what the system relies on. It's founded on war. It's founded on oppression. So when you give it war and oppression, you're only legitimizing its strength, not reducing it. Okay, but people who aren't thinking through this logically and morally and spiritually, at the aspect of like what is statism and what is voluntarism and how do we change minds, you know, they're not thinking like this. They're going to think instinctually. They're going to think, oh, I have to release my trauma. This system has hurt me so bad. I need to release it and project upon the rest of the world. And similarly, what can happen, this is the next point, is defeatism and escapism. I got to go off grid and leave society. I got to escape all these problems. And hey, do you have land? I'm just going to buy land and do my own thing. You know, all these people are not going to be free. And oh my gosh, there's just no hope for humanity. All these people are sheeps. They're NPCs. Like, we're categorizing our own fellow man against our very own message, which is to unite humankind and to free them and to empower them. Are you really for freedom and truth and abundance if you cannot carry that message into inspiration to show them a better way? You are not the Jesus Buddha-like figure that you yourself worship. Instead, you cave away into your isolation and you ignore the rest of the world and you don't give them faith, and yet you claim to be a man of faith. This is the average Christian, the average religionist. This is the average person who just doesn't see any hope and externalizes or internalizes too much and is unable to see that there has to be action within their own life. And it doesn't have to be strife and hardship, but because they perceive it as such, they don't want to take those action steps. They don't want to be a teacher. They don't want to step out of their comfort zone and maybe sacrifice some of their energy, their time, their money to a greater cause. Right, and become that cause, or even make that cause, right? Again, not seeking attention. Like, you have to see the problems, the imbalances here. But here's another one, you know, latest news Andes. Oh, what's the latest news? What's going on? This includes ranters and consumerism, the people who are on social media. Oh, you're wrong. I got to tell you why in hundreds of paragraphs in a whole essay, right? And then consumerism. I got to watch the latest Alex Jones video. I got to watch the latest video from this person, that person, this person. I got to make sure I'm up to date. I got to make sure that I know all the facts of what's going on without this current war, this current situation. You're playing into the game. You got to shift the system. You got to create a parallel system. You got to show people a new alternative reality. Otherwise, you're never going to escape. If you're always focused on the same people, by the way, that are usually funded by the same people, or even people who are talking about the people who are funded by the same people, it's all playing into the game. And don't be surprised if you find people in the independent media who are playing into mainstream, you know, ideas to get more attention, and then in that process essentially giving up their own ownership, giving up their own freedom, because they're covering fear-based news all the time, and they're covering what's going on all the time. They're compromising themselves, right? And so that's a problem. And you say, oh, well, it's to get more traction. It's not about trying to get more traction. Slow but steady wins the race, right? William Lloyd Garrison had to publish hundreds of newspapers by himself before it actually became big, and he was blamed on doing something he didn't do, and that made him more famous. Look at how much Trump got attacked and how much bigger that made him. Don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid of people attacking you. Just know what you're doing. Know what you're doing if it is right. Know how you're affecting the minds of other people, and know that you're not destroying property, or you're not, you know, trying to find a way out of it, and you're just trying to think for what's good for yourself. We are all in this together, and we have to free our fellow man. They deserve our help. They deserve our faith because we love them. That's why we want to free the world. It's not just about ourselves. We have to remember that, okay? The next final thing I have to mention as the biggest distractions and false solutions in the truth movement is the only solution, Andes. Natural law is the only solution. Permaculture, the only solution. This is the only solution. When I talk about statism, I say people have to understand this. I'm not saying it's the only solution. In fact, one of my solutions, spoiler alert, is that anything decentralized is a solution. Okay, but there's certain things that might hit the root cause more than others, and people have to find out for themselves. And I think that becomes more evident over time as they find out that government and giving these special roles and themselves giving other people power is the root cause to the whole power dynamic that gives rise to all the conspiracies, right? I have a video called The Biggest Conspiracy. Watch that video if you're curious. right? And, you know, you wonder, well, how did this thing happen? How did that thing happen? And then you look at democide, the top cause of unnatural death, and you're like, okay, well, that causes more death than private murderers. So is government really a source of order, or is it a source of chaos, right? So you have these only solution Andys who are like, well, we have to look at this, and this is the way I perceive it, and this is the way it has to be perceived, and this is the way it has to be taught. This is going to hold people back more, and then tie that into infighting because they're critiquing other people among them saying you have to do this and that, right? So when I make this video, I'm open to the conversation. That's why I started this video saying you're not going to like what I say. You're going to want to question it. That's good. Okay. I'm always like, well, how can I improve? Because unless I can do that, you know, you can be a restaurant that has food for over 50 years. Unless you're willing to change the menu, you're not going to have a good business, right? It's the same thing with social media, with technology, with anything else. You have to keep up, and change is always happening, and nature has its own desires. And so if we're following truth or nature, there's more of a room for let go than to superimpose and say, I've got it all figured out and this is the way it has to be. The minute you put a box on something, you know, truth doesn't want that. It wants to expand. It wants to show itself, and it doesn't need you to do that. Now, you can be an engine to help people go there, but you're merely a guide. You're merely pointing to the way, but you are not the way. So people get this mixed up, and that's why some become cult-like leaders, and people start to worship their work and the way they do things. And it's in part because of the way they're teaching it, and they're saying it's the only solution. But you have to be vigilant as the follower to not be a follower and to be a leader. Okay, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be a leader. It's the point of recognizing, are you conscious of what you're following? Because you're always following something. You're always leading something. And to deny that you are responsible for yourself or that you're following someone else's ideas is ignorance. Right? And recognizing your ignorance is how you attain knowledge. It's through these opposites that we're going to become most wise in these scenarios, right? When you see infighting, where's that coming from? Is it really a disagreement, or is it a trauma projection? Is it something else going on, an internal strife? They don't have a family network. They don't have a good personal life. They have to push it on other people. There's a lot of people in the truth movement who just don't have money, who have been screwed over by the system, and now they're considered a truther. But that doesn't mean they're actually a truther, because truthers reflect, they think about their reality, they try to find the truth, right? And it doesn't necessarily take life experience to get to that point. It's sad that it takes life experience to get to that point. So think about it. Are you meant to be a truther or a freedom fighter? No, you're just meant to be yourself. And now you're falling to a new identity because of the false identities that you grew up with. That doesn't mean you fall to that. Don't fall to the thing that makes it easier for you to be spotted out and boxed, so that way the elites can attack you. Because the moment you say, I'm part of the freedom group, I'm part of this group, you make it so much easier to be attacked and figured out. And you don't want to be figured out. If you're yourself, you can't be figured out. That's why people don't like Jordan Peterson when he disagrees about religion, right? That's why I defended him. That's why I tend to defend people who think for themselves, or at least I try. Right? So what are the solutions? Anything decentralized. And that includes, you know, you thinking for yourself, decentralizing your own thoughts. But recognizing the sense of grounding as well, which is, can we come together and bring these solutions together? Again, becoming conscious, helping other people become their own leaders. This is really effective communication, effective education, okay? And this is considered moral suasion by the abolitionist, and also considered moral power by people like Aidan Ballou, which he compares it to political power, and he says it's superior across all fields. Right? Civil disobedience. There's been doctors, there's been people I've talked about on my channel. I have a whole playlist talking about why civil disobedience is so effective and how it has been used throughout history. Everyone from the Quakers to the abolitionists to Martin Luther King Jr. to the Gandhi, and you name it, have used this. These are just more modern, recent examples that people look up to, and because they're not showing violence, people like that. Their message lasts longer. Even still, they're going to be attacked. Don't get me wrong, but people will be gravitated toward the message, despite not using too much effort and force, because the force, again, can backfire. Pushing ourselves too much, saying everybody is lied to and that they're sheeple. This can be too much. This could be very pressuring on new people, right? So aside from that, permaculture, voluntarism, these are the two dual solutions that constitute natural intelligence I talk about in my book I wrote with Jim Gale, right? That to me, is the future and the alternative to AI, and helping us recognize the conscious usage of AI, as it seems to be somewhat of an inevitable future. But permaculture is working with nature effectively through growing food. Voluntarism, again, it's a moral way of living, but these two go hand in hand. And you know what? They go by hundreds of other names, like the Golden Rule, and you probably live by it already in your day-to-day life. It's merely spotting out contradictions, things you don't see about yourself, about your own worldviews. And that's why I have nothing to teach you and nothing new to share with you, only illusions and blockades and shadows keeping you from yourself. And through that process of delineation, we are able to become more pure in a sense, find our original oneness, our uncarved block, see the truth, which is evident in here and all around us, right? If we say that's what truth is, then that's what we are trying to do. It's more of a process perhaps than of less trying, right? And getting out of what we are currently trying, investing our energy into, and instead putting our energy into something else. All the same resources we have now that we're putting into churches, schools, and governments can be simply shifted to different usages. And we can convince corporations to do the right thing. People can make money while doing the right thing. These two are not antithetical by definition. Again, some people say the only problem is money. The only thing is that it's like it's all looking at it, right? Crypto is the solution. We have to do that. It's like they're all essential aspects, part of the same picture, as long as they're decentralized, and then we can come together and say no, that's civil disobedience, and say here's why. You want to call it voluntarism or permaculture, it really is just living our lives intelligently. And so you want to network with other people. This is a huge solution, and people doubt it all the time. I still meet people who are like, I'm alone, nobody agrees with me, and man, again, defeatism, escapism, right? And then they complain on social media and they say, well, what else are we going to do? And then they use all the other, distractions or false solutions to cope, right? And then they have false solutions within their own life, like drugs to cope, right? And diets and all sorts of problems that they probably don't share publicly. And so there's an exit and build. There's trying to find a way to get together and show the new parallel system or economy. We need to network and bring ideas and people together, and I can't be the only one doing it, but I'm showing you how massively successful it is. I have a network where I don't have to worry about anything. If I need something, I have hundreds of people I can talk to, and everybody can do this. I did it in PA when I was in the middle of nowhere. I did it in Florida immediately as I moved down here, and immediately had packed rooms full of events by partnering with a local business and then saying, hey, I'll do events here. It'll advertise your business and it'll help me. It's a win-win for everybody. And then from there saying, hey, everybody, if we come together and invest, we can get land. Okay, now we can build things. It's just going to keep going and going and going. And that's the amazing momentum of showing the solution. And the solutions are so inspiring and hard to let go of once you start grasping them and seeing it and living it. And it starts to just help you more and more. That's why it becomes effortless, right? So it may be hard at first, right? The two longest paths to truth, right? The quote I often share is starting and then going all the way. So once you start, then commit yourself to it. Question about it. Think about it, right? Reflect, like, how can I do it? But don't reflect too long. Some people stay in that reflection stage and they don't do anything. Start doing it. By enacting it, the rest will follow suit. Act as if you already got it. Presuppose the truth that you are looking for at the end of the road. You're happy now. You're not trying to achieve happiness. You have happiness. And that's why you are going to be happy, right? So, final disclaimers for this video is that there will always be followers, there will always be problems, there will always be new solutions, and this is why all these things are prone to change, and why even what I said here is prone to question. But nonetheless, some of the things I say that are universally true, at least that we can understand, can be great ground for the freedom and truth movement. And yet we choose to instead rely on past events or potential futures, not realizing that we can take matters into our hands right now in the present. So don't be a follower, don't be a leader. Don't stay focused on problems, don't stay focused on solutions. Be able to change, flow, listen, be conscious, act where necessary, and never close anybody out, because that's how I met all sorts of beautiful people, right? And I continue to meet more beautiful people from all walks of life. And you find out even those people you disagree with, they actually agree quite a bit with you, but you never gave them the chance to open up to you, and they never gave themselves the chance to open up to you. You have to give yourself the faith just as much as you want to give to other people. Thank you very much for watching. This is Corey Angelot. Nature is the answer.